Hey, I'm back. I said that I'd read it a little bit more today, and nobody else is here right now, so I think I'm gonna try and read at least longer than I did yesterday. I don't know if that means 40 minutes or 45 or an hour or what, but basically I'm just gonna read until my throat really hurts. I've kind of just always had throat problems, and reading for a while like this really really hurts my throat, which I don't mind. It's still relaxing for me, even though, and by the time I drink some water and wait a few minutes, it goes away. I probably should see a doctor about that. But anyways, let's get right back into the book. I'm just gonna open it up and try and figure out where we left off. Oh, that's right, we left off right at the chapter break. Alright, so I'm just going to read the last paragraph of chapter 2, and then we'll get into it. There were so many times during those years, though, as we moved from one house to another, that I would find myself thinking about my sister. Usually it was late at night when I couldn't sleep, and I'd try to picture her in her dorm, 40 miles away and a world away. I wondered if she was happy, what it was like out there, and if maybe, just maybe, she ever thought of me. Alright, so now we're at chapter 3, and just as a refresher, we're resuming right where she's being admitted to Perkins Day. Alright. Ruby, welcome. Come join us. There's a free seat right here. I could feel everyone in the room watching me as I followed the outstretched finger of the teacher, a slight, blonde woman who looked barely out of college, to the end of a long table where there was an empty chair. According to my new schedule, this was literature in practice with an M. Conyers. Back at Jackson, the classes all had basic names: English, geometry, world history. If you weren't one of the few golden children anointed early for the AP Ivy League fast track, you made your choices with the minimal and usually disinterested help of one of the 3 guidance counselors allotted for the entire class. Here, though, Mr. Thackeray had spent a full hour consulting my transcript, reading descriptions aloud from the thick course catalog, and conferring with me about my interests and goals. Maybe it was for Jamie's benefit. He was super donor after all, but somehow I doubted it. Clearly they did things differently here. Once I sat down, I read over my list of classes, separated into neat blocks: Intro to Calculus, Global Cultures and Practices, Drawing, Life and Form, twice, figuring that would give people adequate time to stare at me before moving on to something else. Sure enough, by the time I lifted my head a couple of minutes later to turn my attention to the teacher, a cursory check revealed everyone else was pretty much doing the same. As you know, she was saying, walking over to a table in front of a large dry erase board and hopping up onto it, we'll be doing several assignments over the course of the rest of the year. You'll have your research project on the novel of your choosing, and we'll also be reading a series of memoirs and oral histories. I took a minute, now that I felt a bit more comfortable, to look around the room. It was large, with 3 big windows on one side that looked out onto the common green, some new-looking computers in the back of the room, and instead of desks, a series of tables arranged in 3 rows. The class itself was small, 12 or 14 people, tops. To my left, there was a girl with long, strawberry blonde hair, twisted into one of those effortlessly perfect knots, a pencil sticking through it. She was pretty in that cheerleader, student council, president, future nuclear physicist kind of way, and sitting with her posture ramrod straight, a jump Java cup centered on the table in front of her. To my right, there was a huge backpack, about 14 keychains hanging off it, that was blocking my view of whoever was on the other side. Miss Conyers hopped off her desk and walked around it, pulling out a drawer. With her jeans, simple Oxford shirt, and red clogs, she looked about 12, which I figured had to make it difficult to keep control of her classroom. Then again, this didn't seem like an especially challenging group. Even the row of guys at the back table, pumped-up jock types, slumped over or leaning back in their chairs, looked more sleepy than rowdy. "So today," she said, shutting this drawer, "you're going to begin your own oral history project, although it isn't exactly a history as much as a compilation." She started walking down the aisle between the table, and then saw now she had a small plastic bowl in her hand, which she offered to a heavy-set girl with a ponytail. The girl reached in, pulling out a slip of paper, and Miss Conyers told her to read what was on it aloud. The girl squinted at it. "Advice," she said. "Advice," Miss Conyers repeated, moving on to the next person, a guy in glasses, holding out the bowl to him. "What is advice?" No one said anything for a moment, during which time she kept distributing slips of paper, one person at a time. Finally, the blonde to my left said, "Wisdom, given by others." "Good, Heather," Miss Conyers said to her, holding the bowl out to a skinny girl in a turtleneck. "What's another definition?" Silence. More people had their slips now, and a slight murmur became audible as they began to discuss them. Finally, a guy in the back said in a flat voice, "The last thing you want to get from people." "Nice," Miss Conyers said. By now she'd gotten to me, and smiled as I reached into the bowl, grabbing the first slip I touched. I pulled it back, not opening it as she moved past the huge backpack to whoever was on the other side. "What else?" "Sometimes," the girl who'd picked the word said, "you go looking for it when you can't make a decision on your own." "Exactly," Miss Conyers said, moving down the row of boys in the back. As she passed one, a guy with shaggy hair who slumped over his books, his eyes closed, she nudged him and he jerked to attention, looking round until she pointed at the bowl, and he reached in for a slip. "So, for instance, if I was going to give Jake here some advice, it would be what?" "Get a haircut," someone said, and everyone laughed. "Or," Miss Conyers said, "get a good night's sleep, because napping in class is not cool." "Sorry," Jake mumbled, and his buddy, sitting behind him in a butter biscuit baseball hat, punched him in the arm. "The point," Miss Conyers continued, "is that no word has one specific definition. Maybe in the dictionary, but not in real life. So the purpose of this exercise will be to take your word and figure out what it means. Not just to you, but to people around you, your friends, your family, coworkers, teammates. In the end, by compiling their responses, you'll have your own understanding of the term in all its myriad meanings." God, that voice. Everyone was talking now, so I looked down at my slip, slowly unfolding it. "Family," it said, in simple block print. Great, I thought, the last thing I have, or care about. "This must be some kind of joke," I heard someone say. I glanced over, just as the backpack suddenly slid to one side. "What you get?" I blinked, surprised to see the girl with the braids from the parking lot, who'd been running and talking on her cell phone. Up close, I could see she had deep green eyes, and her nose was pierced, a single diamond stud. She pushed the backpack onto the floor, where it landed with a loud thunk, then turned her attention to me. "Hello?" she said. "Do you speak?" "Family," I told her, then pushed the slip towards her, as if she might need visual confrontation. She glanced at it and sighed. "What about you?" "Money," she said, her voice flat. She rolled her eyes. "Of course, the one person in this whole place who doesn't have it has to write about it. It would just be too easy for anyone else." She said this loudly enough that Miss Conyers, who was making her way back to her desk, looked over. "What's the matter, Olivia? Don't like your term?" "Oh, I like the term," the girl said. "Just not the assignment." Miss Conyers smiled, hardly bothered, and moved on, while Olivia crumpled up her slip, stuffing it in her pocket. "You want to trade?" I asked her. She looked over at my family again. "Nah," she said, sounding tired. "That I know too much about." Lucky you, I thought as Miss Conyers resumed her position at her desk, a slim book in her hands. Moving on, she said, to our reading selection for today. Who wants to start us off on last night's reading of David Copperfield? 30 minutes later, after what felt like some major literary deja vu, the bell finally rang, everyone suddenly pushing back chairs, gathering up their stuff, and talking at once. As I reached down, grabbing my own backpack off the floor, I couldn't help but notice that, like me, it looked out of place here. All ratty and old, still stuffed with notebooks full of what was now, in the setting, mostly useless information. I'd known that morning I should probably toss everything out, but instead I just brought it all with me, even though it meant flipping past endless pages of notes on David Copperfield to take even more of the same. Now, I slid the family slip inside my notebook, then let the cover fall shut. You went to Jackson? I looked up at Olivia, who was now standing beside the table, cell phone in hand, having just hoisted her own huge backpack over one shoulder. First, I was confused, wondering if my cheap bag made my past that obvious. Then I remembered the Jackson Spirit sticker on my notebook, which had been slapped there by some overexcited member of the pep club during City Hall. Yeah, I told her. I did. Until when? Couple of days ago. She cocked her head to the side, studying my face while processing this information. In the meantime, distantly through the receiver under her phone, I heard another phone ringing, a call she'd clearly made, but had not yet completed. Me too, she said, pointing at the coat she had on, which now I looked more closely was a Jackson leather jacket. Really? I said. She nodded. Up until last year. You don't look familiar, though. Distantly I heard a, hello? Someone said, as she put her phone to her ear. It's a big place. No kidding. She looked at me for a moment longer, even as whoever was on the other end of the line kept saying hello. It's a lot different from here. Seems like it. I shoved my notebook into my bag. Oh, you have no idea. You want some advice? As it turned out, this was a rhetorical question. Don't trust the natives, Olivia said. Then she smiled, like this was a joke, or maybe not, before putting her phone to one ear, our conversation clearly over, as she began another and turned towards the door. Lainey, hey, what's up? Just between classes? Yeah, no kidding. Well, obviously can't sit around waiting for you to call me. I pulled my bag over my shoulder, following her out to the hallway, which was now bustling and busy, although at the same time hardly crowded, at least in terms of what I was used to. No one was bumping me, either by accident or on purpose, and if anyone did grab my ass, it would be pretty easy to figure out who it was. According to my schedule, I had Spanish in the conversation next, which was in Building C. I figured that since this was my one day I could claim ignorance on all counts, there was no point in rushing, so I took my time as I walked along, following the crowd outside. Just past the door, on the edge of the quad, there was a huge U-shaped sculpture made of some kind of chrome that caught the sunlight winking off of it in little sparks and making everything seem really bright. Because of this effect, it was kind of hard at first to make out the people grouped around it, some sitting, some standing, which was why, when I first heard my name, I had no idea where it was coming from. Ruby! I stopped, turning around. As my eyes adjusted, I could see the people at the sculpture and immediately identified them as the same kind of crowd that, at Jackson, hung out on the low wall just outside the main office. The See and Be Seens, the top of the food chain. The group that you didn't join without an express invitation. Not my kind of people. And while it was kind of unfortunate that the one person I knew outside of Perkins Day was one of them, it wasn't all that surprising either. Nate was standing on the edge of the green. When he saw me spot him, he lifted a hand, smiling. So, he said, as a short guy wearing a baseball hat skittered between us, attempted any great escapes lately? I glanced up at him, then at his friends, which included the blonde jump Java girl from my English class. I now noticed who were talking amongst themselves a few feet behind him. Haha, I thought. Moments ago, I'd been invisible, or as invisible as you can be when you're the lone new person at a school where everyone has probably known each other since birth. Now, though, I was suddenly aware the people were staring at me. And not just Nate's assembled friends, either. Even the people passing us were glancing over, and I wondered how many people had already heard the story, or would before the day's end. Funny, I said, and turned away from him. I'm only kidding around, he called out. I ignored this, continuing on. A moment later, he jogged up beside me, planting himself in my path. Hey, he said. Sorry, it was just a joke. I just looked at him. In broad daylight, he looked even more like a jock than the night before, in jeans, a t-shirt with a collared shirt over it, rope necklace around his neck, excuse me while I learn how to pronounce things, and thick flip-flops on his feet, even though it was way past beach season. His hair, as I noticed last night, was that white kind of blonde, like he spent the summer in the sun, his eyes a bright blue. Too perfect, I thought. The truth was, if this was the first time I'd laid eyes on him, I might have felt a little bad about discounting him as the thick jock with a narrow mindset and an even tinier IQ. As this was our second meeting, however, it was a little easier. Let me make it up to you, he said, nodding at my schedule, which I still had in my hand. You need directions? Nope, I said, pulling my bag higher up on my shoulder. I expected him to look surprised. I couldn't imagine he got turned down much for anything. But instead he just shrugged. All right, he said. I guess I'll just see you around. Or tomorrow morning, anyway. There was a burst of laughter from beside me as two girls sharing a pair of earphones attached to an iPod brushed past. What's happening tomorrow morning? Nate raised his eyebrows. The carpool, he said, like I was supposed to have any idea what he was talking about. Jamie said he needed a ride to school. With you? He stepped back, putting a hand over his chest. Careful, he said, all serious. You're gonna hurt my feelings. I just looked at him. I don't need a ride. Jamie seems to think you do. I don't. Suit yourself, he said, shrugging again, Mr. Easygoing. I'll come by around 7:30. If you don't come out, I'll move on. No biggie. No biggie, I thought. Who talks like that? He flashed me another $1 million smile and turned to leave, sliding his hands into his pockets as he loped back, casual as ever, to his crop of well-manicured friends. Hold on, let me get a drink here. Probably could have paused this, but oh well. Alright. Let's continue. The first warning bell rang just as started towards what I hope. That was confusing. The first warning bell rang just as started towards what I hoped, but was in no way sure was building C. I was supposed to say I started toward what I hoped. Anyways, but was in no way sure was building C. Don't trust the natives, Olivia told me. But I was already a step ahead of her. I didn't trust anyone. Sure, it's not for directions, not for rides, and not for advice either. Sure, it sucked to be lost, but long ago I'd realized I preferred it to depending on anyone else to get me where I needed to go. That was the thing about being alone, in theory or in principle. Whatever happened, good, bad, or anywhere in between, it was always, if nothing else, all your own. After school, I was supposed to take a bus home. Instead, I walked out of Perkins Day stone gates and a half-mile down the road to the Quick Zip, where I bought myself a Zip Coke and settled inside the phone booth. I held the sticky receiver away from my ear as I dropped in a few coins, then dialed a number I knew by heart. Hello? Hey, it's me. I said, then too late I added, Ruby. I listened as Marshall took in a breath, then let out. Ah, he finally said, mystery solved. I was a mystery? I asked. You were something, he replied. You okay? This was unexpected, as was the lump that rose up in my throat as I heard it. I swallowed, then said, yeah, I'm fine. Marshall was 18 and had graduated from Jackson the year before, although we hadn't known each other until he moved in with Rogerson, the guy who sold all my friends their pot. At first, Marshall didn't make much of an impression, just a tall, skinny guy who was always passing through or in the kitchen when we went over there to get bags. I'd never even talked to him until one day I went over by myself and Rogerson wasn't around, so it was just the two of us. Rogerson was all business and little conversation. You knocked, you came in, got what you needed, and got out. I was expecting pretty much the same with Marshall, and at first he didn't disappoint, barely speaking as I followed him to the living room and watched him measure out the bag. I paid him, was just about to get to my feet when he reached over to a nearby cabinet, pulling over a drawer and taking out a small ceramic bowl. "You want some?" he asked. "Sure," I replied. Then he handed it over, along with a lighter. I could feel him watching me. His dark eyes narrowed as I lit it, took some in, and passed it back. The pot was good, better than the stuff we bought, and I felt it almost instantly, the room and my brain slowly taking on a heavy, rolling haze. Suddenly, everything seemed that much more fascinating, from the pattern on the couch beneath me to Marshall himself, sitting back in his chair, his hands folded behind his head. After a few minutes, I realized we'd stopped passing the bowl back and forth, and were just sitting there in silence. For how long, I had no idea. "You know what we need, he said suddenly, his voice low and flat. "What's that?" My own tongue felt thick, and my entire mouth dry. "Slurpees," he said. "Come on." I'd been afraid he would ask me to drive, which was completely out of the question. Instead, once outside, he led the way down a path that cut across a nearby field dotted with power lines, emerging a block down from a convenience store. We didn't talk the entire way there, or when we were in the store itself. It was not until we were leaving, in fact, each of us sucking away at our Slurpee, which were cold and sweet and perfect, that he finally spoke. "Good stuff," he said, glancing over at me. I nodded. "It's fantastic." Hearing this, he smiled, which was unnerving simply because it was something I'd never seen before. Even stranger, as we started back across the path, he reached behind him, grabbing my hand, and then held it, walking a little bit ahead the whole way home. I will never forget that, my Slurpee cold on my teeth and Marshall's palm warm against mine as we walked in the late afternoon sunshine, those power lines rising up and casting long shadows all around us. When he stopped walking and kissed me a few minutes later, it was like time had stopped, with the air, my heart, and the world all so still. And it was this I remembered every other time I was with Marshall. Maybe it was the setting, us alone in that field, or because it was the first time. I didn't know yet that this was all either of us were capable of. Moments together that were great, but also fleeting. Marshall was not my boyfriend. On the other hand, he wasn't just a friend either. Instead, our relationship was elastic, stretching between those two extremes, depending on who else was around, how much either of us had to drink, and other varying factors. This was exactly what I wanted, as commitments had never really been my thing. And it wasn't like it was hard either. The only trick was never giving more than you were willing to lose. With Marshall and me, it was like a game called I Could Care Less. I talked to a guy at a party, he disappeared with some girl at the next one. He didn't return my calls, I'd stay away for a while, making him wonder what I was up to, and so on. We'd been doing this for so long that really it came naturally. But now I was so surprised by how nice it was to hear his voice, something familiar in all this newness, that I found myself breaking my own rule, offering up more than I'd planned. "Yeah, so I've just been, dealing with some family stuff," I said, easing back against the booth wall behind me. "I moved in with my sister and—" "Hang on a sec, okay?" he said. Then I heard his hand cover the receiver, muffling it. Then he was saying something, his words impossible to make out before I heard him come back on. "Sorry," he said, then coughed. "What were you saying?" And just like that, it was over. Even missing him was fleeting, like everything else. "Nothing," I told him. "I should go. I'll catch up with you later, okay?" "Yeah, see you around." I don't know why I give like half the characters such flat voices, but I will. I hung up, leaving my hand on the receiver as I reached into my pocket, pulling out some more change. Then I took a breath and put it back to my ear, dropping in a few coins. Called someone I knew would be more than happy to talk. "Ruby?" Peyton said as soon as you hear my voice. "Oh my God, what happened to you?" "Well," I said, but she was already continuing, her voice coming out in a gush. "I mean, I was waiting for you in the court, just like always, and you never showed up. So I'm like, she must be mad at me or something. But then Aaron said the cops had pulled you out of class and nobody knew why. And I went by your house and it was all dark and everything's fine," I said, cutting her off more out of time concern than rudeness. Peyton was always summarizing, even when you knew the story as well as she did. "It's just a family thing. I'm staying with my sister for a while." "Well," she said, "it's all anyone is talking about. Just so you know, you should hear the rumors, yeah?" "It's terrible," she said, sounding truly aghast. "They'd be doing everything from committing murder to even prostitution." "I've been gone for 2 days," I said. "Of course, I've been sticking up for you," she added quickly. "I told them there's no way you ever sleep with guys for money. I mean, come on." This was typical Peyton, defending my honor vigorously while not realize she was implying that I might be capable of murder. "Well," I said, "I appreciate it." "No problem." I could hear voices behind her. From the sound of it, she was at the clearing a ways down from school, where we always hung out after final bell. "So, what's the real story, though? Is it your mom?" "Something like that," I told her. "Like I said, it's not a big deal." Peyton was my closest friend to Jackson, but like everyone else, she had no idea my mom had taken off. She'd actually never even met her, which was no accident. As a rule, I preferred to keep my private life just that, private. This was especially important with someone like Peyton, whose family was pretty much perfect, rich and functional, lived in a big house in the Arbors, where up until the year before she'd been the ideal daughter, pulling straight A's and lettering in field hockey. During the summer, though, she'd started dating my friend Aaron, who is a harmless but dedicated pothead. In the fall, she'd gotten busted with a joint at school and was asked to leave St. Micheline's, the Catholic school she'd been attending. Her parents, of course, were none too pleased, and hoped Peyton's newfound rebellion was just a phase that would end when she and Aaron broke up. After a few weeks, they did, but by that point, she and I were already friends. Peyton was, in a word, cute. Short and curvy, she was also incredibly naive, which was alternately annoying and endearing. Sometimes I felt more like a big sister to her than a friend. I was always having to rescue her from weird guys at parties, or hold her head when she puked, or explain again how to work the various expensive electronics her parents were always buying her. But she was fun to hang out with, had a car, and never complained about having to come all the way out to pick me up, even though it was on the way to nowhere, or back. "So the thing is," I said to her now, "I need a favor." "Name it," she replied. "I'm over here by Perkins Day, and I need a ride," I told her. "Can you come get me?" "At Perkins Day?" "Near there, just down the street." There was a pause, during which time I heard laughter behind her. "God, Ruby, I wish I could. But I'm supposed to be home in an hour." "It's not that far," I said. "I know, but you know how my mom's been lately." Since the last time Peyton had come home smelling like beer, her parents had insisted a strict accountability program involving constant tracking, elaborate sniff tests, and surprise room searches. "Hey, did you try Marshall? I bet he can—" "No," I said, shaking my head. Peyton had never quite gotten Marshall's in my arrangement. An incurable romantic to her, every story was a love story. "It's fine, don't worry about it." There was another pause, and again I could hear what was happening around her. Laughter, someone's radio playing, a car engine starting up. It was true what I said. It wasn't that far from there to here, only 15 minutes or so, but but at that moment, it suddenly seemed like a long way. "You sure?" she asked. "'Cause I can ask someone here." I swallowed, leaning back against the side of the booth. On the other side, above the phone, someone had written, "Where do you sleep?" in thick black marker. Scratched underneath, less legibly, was a reply, "With yo mama." I reached up, rubbing my face with my hand. It wasn't like I'd expected anyone to come rescue me anyway. "Nah," I said. "That's alright. I'll figure out something." "Alright," she said. A car home beeped in the background. "Give me your sister's number, though. I'll call you tonight. We can catch up." "I'm still getting settled," I told her. "I'll give you a call in a few days." "Okay," she said easily. "And hey, Ruby, what?" "I'm glad you're not a hooker or a murderer." "Yeah," I said. "Me too." I hung up the phone and stepped out of the booth to finish off my Coke and contemplate my next move. The parking lot, which had filled up with Perkins Day students. Clearly this was some sort of off-site hangout, with people sitting on the hoods and bumpers of their expensive cars, slumming at the Quick Sip. I love the name of their convenience store. Quick Sip. Scanning the crowd, I spotted Nate, off to the right, arms crossed over his chest, leaning against the driver's side door of a black SUV. A dark-haired girl in a ponytail and a cropped blue jacket was with him, telling some story and gesturing wildly, the zip coke in her hand, waving back and forth as she spoke. Nate, of course, was smiling as he listened, the epitome of the nicest guy in the world. Then something occurred to me. I glanced at my watch. It was just before 4, which meant I had little over an hour before I'd be late enough for anyone to notice. It was enough time to do what I had to do if I got going soon enough. All I needed was a little help, and if I worked things right, maybe I wouldn't even have to ask for it. Alright, I'm not done, but my voice is getting a little tired, so there's about, we're on page 80, so there's about 17, 18 more pages of this chapter. And we've been through, right around that many pages, too, so we're looking at a little more than an hour if I finish this whole chapter. So I might not, I promised a longer video today than yesterday, so maybe I'll read, half of what's left, 45 minutes. Good solid chunk of time. I don't know, I'm still feeling it out. I know that I'm, stopping and talking more today, but what you gonna do? You clicked on the video. Haha. To be honest, I forgot how many, adult, mature themes are in this book. Of course, the drugs and the stuff with her mom, I remembered, but it's a lot more than I, remember from, last time I read this. It was last summer on a road trip to Idaho. So, I feel like I guess when you're reading it in your head, you're not thinking as much of that, you're thinking more about the character because you're really getting inside their head or something, I don't know. Anyways, I've been talking for 2 minutes now, so alright, let's continue. As I hitched my backpack over my shoulder and started toward the road, I made it a point not to look at the Perkins Day contingent, even as I passed right in front of them. Instead, I just kept my focus forward on the big intersection that lay ahead. It was a long walk home, and even farther to where I really needed to be, making this a serious gamble, especially considering how I'd acted earlier. But part of being nice was forgiveness, or so I'd heard. And so I rolled the dice anyway. 2 blocks down the road, I heard a car horn, then an engine slowing behind me. I waited until the second beep before arranging my face to look surprised and turned around. Sure enough, there was Nate. "Let me guess," he said. He was leaning across the passenger seat, one hand on the wheel, looking up at me. "You don't need a ride." "Nope," I told him. "Thanks, though." "This is a major road," he pointed out. "There's not even a sidewalk. Who are you, the safety monitor?" He made a face at me. So you'd prefer to just walk the 6 miles home? It's not 6 miles, I said. You're right, it's 6.2, he replied as a red Ford beeped angrily behind him and zoomed past. I run it every Friday, so I know. Why are you so hell-bent on driving me somewhere? I asked. I'm chivalrous, he said. Yeah, right, I thought. That's one word for it. Chivalry's dead. And you will be too if you keep walking along here, he said. Get in. And it was just that easy. Inside Nate's car was dark, the interior immaculate, and still smelled new. Even so, there's an air freshener hanging from the rear view. Logan had said, Rest assured, executive services, we worry so you don't have to. It's my dad's company, he explained when he saw me looking at it. We work to make life simpler in these complicated times. I raised my eyebrows. That sounds like something right off a brochure. Because it is, he said. I have to say it if anyone asks what we do. And what if they want an actual answer? Then, he said, glancing behind him as he switched lanes, I tell them we do everything from picking up mail to walking dogs to getting your dry cleaning to frosting cupcakes for your kid's school party. I consider this. Doesn't sound as good. I know, hence the rule. I sat back in my seat, looking out the window, sitting up, at the buildings and cars blaring fast. Okay, fine. So he wasn't terrible company. Still, I wasn't here to make friends. So look, he said, about earlier in that joke I made. It's fine, I told him, don't worry about it. He glanced over at me. What were you doing, though? I mean, on the fence, if you don't mind my asking. I did mind. I was also pretty much at his mercy at this point, so I said, wasn't it obvious? Yeah, I suppose it was, he said. I think I was just, surprised. At what? I don't know, he shrugged. Just seems like most people would be trying to break into that house, not escape it, considering how cool Cora and Jamie are, I mean. Well, I said, I guess I'm not most people. I felt him look at me as I turned my head, looking out the window again. My knowledge of this part of town was fairly limited, but from what I could tell, we were getting close to Wildflower Ridge, Jamie and Cora's neighborhood, which meant it was time to change the subject. So anyway, I said, shooting for casual, I do appreciate the ride. No problem, he said. It's not like we aren't going to the same place. Oh, I think I lost my place here for a minute. No. Yeah. So anyway, I said, shooting for casual, I do appreciate the ride. No problem, he said. It's not like we aren't going to the same place. Actually, I paused, then waited for him to look over at me. When he did, I said, if you could just drop me off at a bus stop, that'd be great. Bus stop, he said. Where are you going? Oh, just to a friend's house. I have to pick something up. We were coming up to a big intersection now. Nate slowed, easing up behind a VW Bug with a flower applique. Oh, it's kind of far. On the back bumper. Well, he said, where is it? Oh, it's kind of far, I said quickly. Believe me, you don't want to have to go there. The light changed and traffic started moving forward. This is it, I thought. Either he takes the bait or he doesn't. It was 4:15. Yeah, but the bus will take you ages, he said after a moment. Look, I'll be fine, I said, shaking my head. Just drop me off here by the mall. The thing about negotiations, not to mention manipulation, is you can't go too far in any direction. Refusing once is good, twice usually okay, but a third is risky. You never know when the other person will just stop playing you, and you end up with nothing. I felt him glance over at me again, and made a point of acting like I didn't notice, couldn't see him wavering. Come on, I thought, come on. Really, it's cool, he said finally, as the entrance of the highway appeared over the next hill. Just tell me where to go. Man, Nate said as he bumped up the driveway to the yellow house, avoiding holes in a sizable stack of waterlogged newspapers. Up ahead, I could already see my mom's Subaru, parked just where I left it, gas needle and empty, That last day Peyton had picked me up for school. Who lives here again? Just this girl I know, my son. As far as I was concerned, this entire endeavor would be quick and painless. Get in, get what I needed, and get out, hopefully with as little explanation as necessary. Then Nate would take me back to Cora's, and this would all be over. Simple as that. But then, just as we passed the bedroom window, I saw the curtain move. It was quick, so quick I wondered if I'd seen anything at all. Just a shift of the fabric an inch to the left, then back again. The exact way it would have to for someone to peer out and yet still not be seen. I wasn't sure what I'd been expecting to find here. Maybe the honeycuts in the midst of some project, or the house empty, cleaned out as if we'd never been here at all. This possibly, though, had never crossed my mind. Which was why Nate hadn't even finished parking when I pushed open my door and got out. "Hey, do you want?" I heard him call after me, but I ignored him, instead taking the stairs 2 at a time, and arriving at the front door breathless, my fingers already fumbling for the key around my neck. Once I put in the lock, the knob, familiar in my hand, turned with a soft click, and I was in. "Mom?" I called out, my voice bouncing off all the hard surfaces back at me. I walked into the kitchen, where I could see the clothesline was still strung from one wall to the other, my jeans and shirts now stiff and mildewy as I pushed past them. "Hello?" In the living room, there was a row of beer bottles on the coffee table, and the blanket we usually kept folded over one arm of the sofa was instead balled into one corner. I felt my heart jump. I would have folded it back, wouldn't I? I kept moving, pushing open my bedroom door and flicking on the single bulb overhead. This didn't look just like I'd left it, save for my closet door being left open. I assumed by whoever packed up the clothes that had been brought to me at Poplar House. I turned, crossing back into the living room and walking over to the other bedroom door, which was shut. Then I put my hand on the knob and closed my eyes. It wasn't like making a wish or trying to dream something into being real. In that moment, I tried to remember all the times I'd come home and walked to the same door, easing it open to see my mom curled up in her bed, hair spilling over the pillowcase, already reaching a hand to shield her eyes from the light behind me. This image was so clear in my mind that when I first pitched open the door, I was almost sure I did see a glimpse of red, some bit of movement. My heart jumped into my throat, betraying in one instant all the emotions I'd denied to myself and everyone else in the last week. Then, though just as quickly, something shifted. The object and room itself fell into place. Bed, dark walls, and the window, where I now remembered the bit of broken pane, half taped up, where a breeze could still inch in, ruffling the curtain. I had been mistaken. But even so, I stayed where I was, if by doing so the room would, in the next moment, suddenly be anything but empty. "Ruby?" Nate's voice was low, tentative. I swallowed, thinking how stupid I was, thinking that my mom might have actually come back, when I knew full well that everything she needed she'd taken with her. "I'll be done in a sec," I said to him, hating how my voice was shaking. "Are you—" He paused. "Are you okay?" I nodded, all business. "Yeah, I just have to grab something." I heard him shift his weight, taking a step, although toward me or away I wasn't sure, and not knowing this was enough to make me turn around. He was standing in the doorway to the kitchen, the front door open behind him, turning his head slowly, taking it all in. I felt a surge of shame. I'd been so stupid to bring him here. Like I, of all people, didn't know better than to lead a total stranger directly to the point where they could hurt me most, knowing how easily they'd be able to find their way back to it. "This place," Nate said, looking around on the bottles on the table, a lone cobweb stretching across the room between us. "It's like—" Suddenly there's a gust of wind outside, and a few leaves blew in the open door, skittering in across the kitchen floor. I felt so shaken, unsettled, that my voice was sharp as I said, "Just wait in the car, all right?" He looked at me for a second. "Yeah," he said, "sure thing." Then I stepped outside, pulling the door shut behind him. "Stop it," I told myself, feeling tears pricking my eyes. So stupid. I looked around the room, trying to clear my head and concentrate on what I should take with me. But everything was blurring, and I felt a sob work its way up my throat. I put my hand over my mouth, my shoulders shaking, and forced my feet to move. Think, I kept saying in my head as I walked back to the kitchen and began pulling stuff off the clothesline. Everything was stiff and smelly, and the more I took down, the more I could see the rest of the kitchen. The pots and pans piled in the sink, the buckets I used to collect water from the bathroom, the clothesline now sagging over my head. I was doing just fine, I told Cora, and at the time I'd believed it. Now, standing there with my stiff clothes in my arms, the smell of rotting food filling my nostrils, I wasn't so sure anymore. I reached up, wiping my eyes, and looked back out at Nate, who was sitting behind the wheel of his car, a cell phone to his ear. God only knew what he was thinking. I looked down at my clothes, knowing I couldn't bring them with me, even though the few things in the next room, and that beat-up, broken-down Subaru were all I really had. As I dropped them onto the table, I told myself I'd come back for them and everything else, just as soon as I got settled. It was such an easy promise to make. So easy that I could almost imagine another person saying the same things to themselves as they walked out that door, believing it too. Almost. Alright, I'm gonna stop there. My throat's killing me. I really should figure out what's up with that. If you're listening to this, thank you so much. So the fourth part of this now, I've probably been reading this book for like an hour, or 2 hours and 45 minutes total. We're not even to chapter 4 yet, and I do fully intend to finish this book, but I also eventually want to do at least partially ASMR videos on this channel, which these videos are not, but kind of adjacent to it. So, if you could comment whether you want the next video to be another part of this, or like a really true like ASMR roleplay, or just like kind of compilation of triggers, let me know. And I may not make another video tomorrow, but if I don't, I'll definitely do one Monday. Alright, thank you so much for listening, everybody, and I'll see you soon.